All right, okay. Hi guys, good evening. Guys, I just want to check. I'm a little confused. Why is there two sets of people here, right? Uh, I remember getting a message yesterday from Sheikha saying that she's coming with two friends. I think it was Sarah and Shakira. And then how did new names get added onto that list? Did you all discuss with each other and do you all agree? If you're okay with the same question, then I'm fine because otherwise, guys, it's hard for me to cover so many different questions in half an hour, right? Because then you all can break down and come, guys. Don't worry until the I'm planning to do it daily until your exam, hopefully, given my schedule, right? So don't worry too much, right? Because sometimes when it's too much people, also it's a little hard. And also when you're maybe pairing up, try to pair with someone with someone of your level. I'm not trying to put anyone down, but then it's easy. Like now, let's say if someone is at, let's say, two people at the 50s, 60s level. So when the two of you all come, then I can cater it to your level, right? Let's say two people at the 90s, then I can put it at your level. Like when it's a mix of, let's say, a 50, 90, sometimes it might not benefit the 90% also because I might be teaching a little easy. The 50% also might not benefit because I might do it a little bit harder. So you get it, right? I'm not trying to put anyone down, but just see, I have no idea which level you all are at. But in case you all are pairing up and seeing that, try to get the best use of it. Okay, so just like I've told the other sessions also, so you can clear your doubts. You can send in your doubts on WhatsApp. You can send it on Zoom. If it's a text, I would prefer it on Zoom. If it's a picture or something, you can send it on WhatsApp. And you can also unmute yourself and clarify because sometimes typing takes time. Uh, good. Is an inferior good, but okay. So this part, right? Okay. There is a question. Hold on. Let me go to your session. Session 2, 3, 4. Okay, you all are fine. Okay. So we're at session 5. This is the slot from go from 5:5 to 5:35. Okay. Right. So on your end, okay, few questions. Okay. So first of all, okay, the difference between a given good. Okay, I'll copy and paste the question. Yeah, I'll copy a part of it. Okay, difference between given good and inferior good. Given good is an inferior good, but inferior good is not a given good. Not all inferior is a given good. I'll explain the story. Okay. Now, in simple terms, guys, there are a few conditions. Right? I'll go with the basics and then I'll go to these income effects, substitution effects. But listen to me here, right? So when you talk of an inferior good, right? What is the criteria to call a good an inferior good? The criteria to call a good an inferior good is if that good has a negative relationship with income. Demand and income has a negative relationship. So, right. So you have the criteria. Okay. When do you call a good the inferior good? If it has a negative relationship with income and demand. Right. So that means if your income increases, you buy less. If your income decreases, you might buy more. That's an inferior good. That's how you define it. Now there are some. Now see, I have not talked about the price relationship here, right? What type of relationship does price have with this thing? Now usually, guys, okay, inferior good. This is the main criteria. It has to have a negative relationship with income and demand, and there has to be a negative relationship, right? Usually there is a negative relationship with price and quantity demand. So meaning what happens? There is a downward slope in demand curve. So in other words, it complies with the law of demand. Now, a given good, guys, is a special type of inferior good, right? So given goods ideally, right, they meet the first criteria. Given goods meet this criteria. So if you're looking at a given good, guys, okay, so given good, right, it does have a negative relationship with income and demand. So that criteria is met. So it's an inferior good. So all given goods, as long as they have a negative relationship with income and demand, they are inferior goods. So inside inferior goods only, guys, given goods will also come here. So you can say all inferior goods, right, are given goods. Sorry, the other way. All given goods, right, all given goods are inferior goods. Why? The criteria to meet the inferior criteria, right? For a good to be inferior, it has to have a negative relationship. So now again, let me put that in a simple term, right? So let's say that if I put it into, let's say, a thing like this, right? So if you take, these are the goods with, right? Okay, so these are all the goods with, okay, I'll draw this arrow here. All the goods with a negative relationship, right? All the goods with a negative relationship. Inside this whole pie, there will be a small one, right? There will be small part, right? Let's say this part, this has a negative relationship with income also. Income and demand also has a negative relationship. In addition to that, it has a positive relationship with price and quantity demand. So this part here, this is what you call a given good, guys. So a given good is a inferior good. Why? Because it has a negative relationship. In addition to that, guys, it also has a positive relationship with price. So usually inferior goods, this criteria and this criteria. So all of this comes here. This part comes there. Makes sense? No? Is that okay? Remember, inferior good relationship has to be a negative relationship with income. For a given good, ideally, in addition to having a negative relationship with income, it has to have a positive relationship with price. So every single given good meets the inferior good criteria. So you can say all given goods are inferior. But for an inferior good, for it to be given, it has to have a positive relationship with price. So all inferior goods won't be given. So remember, the main highlight is here, guys. For a good to be inferior, it has to have this. For a good to be a given, it has to have this. So that is how it works. Sure. Yes, we would have discussed the same question also. Is I all okay? Find the pie of your. Okay. And then in addition to that, case, when you're talking right now, when they give you a question, don't stop here. Right now, you're a bit more advanced people, right? So go ahead and talk about the substitution effect and the income effect, guys. Right? So I'm not going to touch too much on that. Now, say in an inferior good, guys, which effect is more powerful? Is the income effect or the substitution effect more powerful? In a inferior good, exactly. So in an inferior good, substitution effect goes complies with the law of demand, but the income effect does not comply. But overall, since the substitution effect is more powerful, the price effect complies with the law of demand. That means price effect is kind of negative. But if you take a given good, yes, substitution income effect is there, but the income effect again does not comply, and the income effect is much more stronger, right, in a given good. Meaning the overall price effect is positive. It goes the other way of law of demand. So it doesn't comply with the law. So you can add in those parts as well, right? So I have not talked too much about that, but please make sure that you add them for an answer that you got. Okay, so if that's that, we can move on to the next question. Any other questions? You sent something on WhatsApp, guys? Just let me know through WhatsApp. Okay, perfect. drawing straight lines here. I'm hoping studying is going good. Okay, straight. Give me a second. What's up? It's loading. Hold on. What's up? Okay. How to find produce surplus after the price flow? Okay, so this question I would have discussed on this also. Did you check the BYC recording by any chance? The produce surplus after the price flow. So in this context, I'll just check that I should have discussed this in BYC, and I discussed this on the fast track also, if I'm not mistaken, that exact question. So I'll just recap that. Yeah. So in this case, guys, now usually after a price flow, okay, I'll copy and paste the question. Hold on. Because otherwise others watching later, they can't figure out what am I talking about. Okay, this is 2020, right? Okay, it's come. Okay. Okay, so this is the question. Okay, there's a question. I think this is a 2020 paper, the 2019. Okay, one of these a recent papers. They're asking for deadweight loss. So ideally, you have to get the change in economic surplus. Now, this question was a little unique because usually after they give you a price flow, they tell you whether there is going to be a deficiency payment or whether there is going to be a government purchase, right? But here they're not saying anything. So meaning government has put the price flow, but they have not intervened yet. So if you look at my tudes or anything, right? There will be a diagram like that under price flow. I would talk about an initial diagram, and then I would talk about two different diagrams where government purchases and where this happens. So in simple terms, right? I'm not going to put numbers and all. I'll just explain you how the area comes here, right? So maybe if you have numbers, you can give me the numbers. Okay, so you have the demand and the supply, right? You had equilibrium price, you had equilibrium quantity. Government came in and put a price flow of 72, right? So the moment government comes and puts a price flow of 72, what happens? The quantity demand falls. So let's say quantity demand is only, let's say 5 units, right? The quantity supply, right? But now since the price is high, since the price is 72, yes, I'm just putting random numbers, these are not numbers in the question, right? So let's assume that the suppliers are going to supply 50. But my question to you here, guys, now earlier, let's say equilibrium quantity was 10. Will the suppliers go and supply 15 units now? Yes or no? Will they supply 15 units? What do you all think? Yes or no? Will they go and supply? At 72, they're willing to supply 15. Exactly. They won't supply 15. Why won't they supply 15? They will not supply 15 because if they supply 15, they're going to face a huge loss. Why? Consumers are going to buy only 5. Consumers are going to buy only 5. So if consumers are going to buy only 5, what is the point of going and supplying 15 in the market? So what happens, right? The producer will limit his supply to 5 units. So producer's surplus, remember always that I've told you, difference between what the producer expects, right, and what he actually gets. So when the government has promised the price of 72, he actually gets 72 per unit. The price that he expects is shown by his supply curve. This is the price that he expects. So the difference between the price that he actually gets and what he expects is what you call the producer surplus. So this area becomes a producer surplus. This is like a trapezium. So what you can ideally do is you can, if you want, you can break it down and find a rectangle area and a triangle area separately, or else directly you can find the area of a trapezium. That's about you working on your basic maths. So consumer surplus falls down to this small part. Why? Because in the market now, only 5 units are being sold. Price is a 70. So, and this is your dead weight loss, but you can't simply calculate this area of this triangle. When it's an 8-mark question, you have to show the change in, I guess I'm hoping you all remember that. Remember I told you for 8 marks, just don't calculate the area of the triangle in 2 minutes and say dead weight loss is this much. You're not going to get your 8 marks, right? You need to show change in economic surplus. To that, for that you have to get consumer surplus before, producer surplus before, all that we'll have to work on. Okay, right. Any other questions? Anyone else? If you have sent on WhatsApp with me. Okay. Okay. How does unemployment occur during minimum price control? Nice. Determinants of PDBs, how determines last year on time. Okay. Good. Okay, so I'll copy and paste the 2 questions. There's 2 different questions. I don't know where the numbers 4 and 5 came from. Okay, never mind. I'll just remove that question number. Okay. So this one. Okay. So I'll start with this itself. I'll kind of use the same. How does this happen, right? How does unemployment problems happen in minimum price controls? Now I'll tell you here, right? Now I'll use this. Okay, I'll use a different diagram. Okay. Wait, I'll put this question later. Give me a second. I'll erase this. Okay. So how does unemployment problems happen in minimum price control? Now here, guys, when we know this, the previous one, right? The previous question we spoke of is also a minimum price control, but this is a minimum price control in the goods market, right? Now we would have learned a goods market and a factor market, right? Have you all heard this concept called minimum wages? Yes. Now for these tea pluckers, for these dairy laborers, they put in this concept called minimum wages. Per day minimum you have to pay 1,000 rupees, minimum pay 1,005. So that minimum wage is what you call a minimum price. So like in the goods market, you have minimum prices. In the factor market, you have something called minimum wages. So that is how the unemployment problem, I'll show you, right? So if you look at this, okay, now these, remember we're talking about the factor market, right? Not a good now. So let's say there is a tea plucking industry, right? So there is an industry, right? What they do is they're working on tea pluckers, right? So if you look at tea pluckers, let's say there is a supply of labor. Yes. So supply of labor comes from whom? The supply of labor. So supply of labor comes from this, let's say, for example, for you to remember, say the ladies, right? The ones who are plucking the tea. So they are the ones willing to supply. Sorry, supply curve has to be upward sloping. Okay, I'll make this the demand. Okay, we'll talk about demand for labor first. Okay, the demand for labor. So demand for labor comes from where, guys? The demand for labor, right, comes from the company, the tea plucking company. So this is from the firm. Yes, no. Usually, guys, if you take the firm's perspective, now remember, now this axis is not price. This axis is the wage now. Hold on, this board is a very annoying board, though, but I'm getting used to it. Okay. This axis is the wage, right? This is the quantity of labor. So if you look at it, guys, who demands for labor? It's the firms. The firms are the people demanding for labor. So when the wage is low, why is it downward sloping? When there is a low wage, firms will demand high amounts of labor because it's cheap for them now. If you only have to pay 200 rupees per person, now they're hiring a lot of people. But if you have to pay, let's say, somewhere around 1,000 rupees per person, they might hire only a little people. That's the demand for labor. Then on the same side, you have the supply of labor, right? So the supply of labor comes from who? The supply of labor comes from, right? Like I said, the ladies, right? The ladies or whoever the tea pluckers, right? So I'll mention the ladies here, right? For all to, right? Imagine the tea plucking ladies. Now these tea pluckers, on their side, what happens? The more more the wage, they're willing to work more. No, everyone is planning to go now. Now, if the industry is giving only a wage of, let's say, 100 rupees, not many people are willing to work. But if the industry is giving a wage of, let's say, somewhere around 1,000 rupees, now a lot of people are willing to work. The quantity of labor is high. Does that make sense? Supply and the demand for labor, how does those come? Shape. Okay. So based on this interaction, guys, based on the interaction for demand and supply for labor, you will have the equilibrium wage, right? And the equilibrium quantity. So now let's assume that the equilibrium wage is, let's say, 800 rupees a day, right? And let's assume 100 people are willing to work, right? 100 people are willing to work. So now let's assume government comes all of a sudden and implements a minimum wage. In other words, that's what you call a minimum price, right? A minimum price for this labor. The government comes and says, okay, look here, we are going to give you, right? Tea pluckers, get ready. I'm going to start promising you, let's say the new government is coming in. They're promising you, let's say 1,200 per day. So government is coming and saying the minimum wage is 1,200. Okay, people are fine. So people are very happy now. But what they don't realize is when the wage goes up to 1,200, look here, now a lot of people are willing to work, right? So all these people from other sides, and if the parents are there, now the daughter is also coming to work, that everyone is willing to work. So the supply of labor went up. Let's say supply of labor, now 150 people are willing to work. But what happens on the other side? On the other side, the company, the people who actually demand for labor, right? When the wage has gone up, you know, the demand for labor will fall. Now the company will be only willing to hire 50 people. So what happens to these remaining 100 people here now? These 100 people here go unemployed. So why did they go unemployed? Because these people promised a higher wage. Now earlier at 800, 100 people had jobs. But now when they went, like the government came in like a big shot and said, we are giving 1,200. The company all said, okay, fine, I will pay 1,200, but I can't hire this much of people. My cost is also high. I will hire only 50 people. So all of a sudden, this gap here becomes the unemployment. So this happens in the factor market, not in the product market. Shift. Makes sense? Okay, shall we move to the next question? Okay, send me a WhatsApp, I'll check. Hold on. There was one more question that I did not answer. Details of PDPS, how to determine elastic or inelastic on the time table. That's an easy one, not that hard. Okay. So if you look at this, right? So based on determinants for PED and PES. So usually, okay, now if the time taken, okay, let's talk about demand. Let's talk about PED first, right? So if the price changes today, right? Let's say we're talking about Anchor milk powder. Anchor milk powder, 400 rupees. Now today it became 450. Let's say 440. It increased by 10%. So immediately, will you stop buying Anchor? Now today you went to buy Anchor, all of a sudden it's at 440. Are you going to stop buying Anchor? No. So you will take some time, right? Now you might, your parents might go and ask your aunt and see, okay, what brand are you all using? Aunt will say Malibu. Then she will ask one of her friends and see, what are you all using? They will say Rat, right? Then, okay, how does it taste? How many cups it can make? Is it good? Is it good like Anchor? Right? So they will, it takes some time. So immediately, you will not change your demand, right? In the short run, even if the price has increased, right? Even if in the short run, even if the price has increased, because you need some time to find what are now. In my example, Anchor Malibu, you can easily find substitute. But let's assume something that is not that easy. So you have to find the substitute, you have to search, right? So there is a time that is involved. So in the short run, you don't change your demand, meaning your demand is inelastic in the time period. So, but after some time, right, we can say eventually, in the long run, Now you have spoken to your uncles and aunties and friends, and you also have tried and tested a few things. What happens? Now you change the demand. Now you move to something else because increasing. So in the long run, you become elastic. Is that okay? Shape PED part of it. Okay. And then on the same side, you have the PES, the price elasticity of supply. So let's say if the price of something increases, can you increase the supply today itself? Immediately, can you increase the supply? No. It takes some time. No, come on, you have to produce that good. No, you have to buy the raw material, you put the factory, from the factory, it has to be made, then it has to come to the shops. It takes time. So immediately, you can't change supply. Today, price increase, can you increase the supply tomorrow? No. It might now. Let's say it's like an agricultural good. Let's say it's potatoes or something. You think you can increase supply tomorrow? No, it will take some time. So immediately, or in the short run, it's going to be inelastic, right? The supply will be inelastic. You can't change. But in the long run, eventually, after some time, right, you can now soon change. Now you can change. Now you have planted the seeds and the crops have grown and everything is fine. Now you can change your supply. Now it becomes elastic. Yep. Those two. Okay, so there is questions on WhatsApp, I heard. Hold on. Give me a second, guys. Give me a second. Why not fifth one is the answer? Okay, let's come to this. Looks like one of my questions. Is it one of my questions? A certain economy has been producing good X and Y. If the production possibility curve drawn for this economy is concave to the origin, which are the following statements do you agree? X are homogeneous. Different techniques, results can be relocated from X to can be reallocated. Yes. Okay, so it's like this one, right? So if you look at this, okay, now here they're saying that an economy has a concave PPC. So what is a concave PPC? A concave PPC means that the resources used in one industry are not the exact same resources used in another industry. So let's take what? Bread and mobile phone, right? So it's not the exact same. So there is increasing opportunity cost. Now here you say one says resources you're producing both goods and X and Y are homogeneous. They're saying it's the exact same. No, it's not the same, right? The production of good X and Y use different techniques. Exactly, increasing opportunity cost, that's a feature there. So that's also not an answer. Resources can be reallocated from good X to Y. This should be your answer, right? But you're asking Y is not 5, no, right? So both X and Y are produced on situation of increasing returns. You can't say increasing returns, guys. You can say increasing opportunity cost if you want to. So, right? And then resource used to produce X cannot be used to produce Y. There's nothing like that. No. Just because the resources are different doesn't mean you can't switch. You can switch. Remember the whole increasing opportunity cost story. Now, if you want to increase the production of this good, because the resources are different, you have to give up more and more resources. Now, for example, if you're moving from mobile to bread, first you will take the very good people to make bread. Then you will take the other good people. So when you keep on taking, it doesn't mean this bread fellow can't make mobile phones at all. You can move it, but you have to take more and more. So you can't say, right? You can't say that what cannot be produced, you can't say can be produced. Yes. You can be produced, but the amount that you take keeps on increasing. Does it make sense? So resources can be relocated. So you can, let's say, right now, let's say this is bread and this is mobile phones. Right now, let's say you're making at this point, right? So if you want to make more mobile phones, yes, you can relocate resources, right? So you can reduce the production of bread and you can increase the production of mobile phone. Relocation is not a problem. So, shit, fine. That's okay. Okay. And then okay, there's another one. Hold on. Okay, that's the same thing. I look. Shaker has one more. In this. Hold on. Let me just copy and paste the question and this thing. I did not read. Hold on. Okay, that was a good question. I'll remember that question. Make my body start. This question. Okay, so your question is, in this the formula we should find income elasticity or demand using arc elasticity method, and how do you identify whether you should be financially sound? I think there was a small hint given in the question. Can you send me a picture of the question also? In this, I think in the question they have it was a tricky question. Even in the moment I first read also I did with this, but I don't think they can mark you wrong. But there was a small hint that because they never mentioned find income elasticity at this level of income. So usually if they tell you, right, in a question, if they tell you find the income elasticity YED at the income level of 35,000, then you use point PED. If they say find this thing at the level of 45,000, then you might use point PED again. But I think if I'm not mistaken in that question, they have not mentioned something like that. They've simply asked you to calculate YED. So that is why they're using the average there, the average income and the average quantity. So they're using the arc method because of that. Are we okay? Unless they specifically say find YED at this level of income, you can use this method. Okay. Shape, questions, problems, issues. Is this the formula for arc method? It's like this. There is no formula, right? So now here, but I'm not very sure how this one comes. So it's what is this? Income is change in quantity demand over change in income into average income over this. Where does these numbers come from? Change in quantity over this. Yeah, you can use this now to get average income. Yes, you can add the two, add these and divide by 2. Even if you eliminate this, divide by 2 is also fine. But since they are taking average, yes, you can add and divide by 2. But at the end, since both sides you're dividing by 2, you don't really have to divide by 2 also. You can just save 35,000 plus 45,000, divide by 30 plus 20. No problem. But yes, you can divide by 2 and give. This is like this thing, but it's, I think, the first time that was tested also. So that's how it works. Sorry. Is that okay? So equation is correct. So usually you take change in quantity over change in income into income over quantity. Then you're calculating at one specific income level. But here you're calculating not at one specific income level because they have not told you at 35,000 no 45,000. So you're calculating in general, in average for that income range. So you can take the average. No problem. Check. Any other questions that you all have sent on WhatsApp? No? Anything else? Questions? Chat box does not have anything else. Did I miss something? If that's it, we can wrap things up and then maybe there is one. Okay, the question. What is income elasticity demand for bread for this consumer? Yeah, so they're simply asking income elasticity of demand of bread for the consumer. So in that case, they're not even asking you about what is the income elasticity at the income level of 35,000 for the consumer, at the level of 45,000. They're not mentioning income level. So in general, they have given you that. So then, yes, it's better to use the average method and get the answer. But I don't think they would have marked you wrong for the other one also. But this is better, I also think. Okay. Shit. Anything else did I miss? No. Is that it? So if that's it, we'll wrap things up, and then maybe in the upcoming days, and we have a few other sessions. So I'll put the next set of slots on evening. That means tomorrow evening, on depending on my schedule for Saturday and Sunday, I'll put in some slots. So based on that, if you all have questions, fill in the name. Guys, please make sure, right, when you all fill in names, if the name is already filled, speak to those people who have already there. If you have the same questions, come, or else take a free slot. If there are no free slots, take some time. In the future also, there will be slots. No? Take some other time. Okay, so that's it. Then I'll see you all someday soon. Continue studying. All the very best. See you guys. Bye bye. Welcome. Bye.